Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Safari. Today is kind of a wrap up of the 2025 film year. So I'll be going over my top 10 films for the year. These are my opinions, so some of them on the list might be different from yours. You may have other opinions. Totally fine. They're opinions. Um, there were a lot of great movies in 2025. When I was making my top 10 list for the year to get ready for this episode, I definitely had a hard time, especially as I was getting towards like the top like two or three spots because there were so many good movies this year, a lot that I liked, a lot that I watched, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm excited to get right into it. So stick around as we look back at 2025. So 2025, there were a lot of great films, a lot being made throughout the year. Some surprises too, some that we expected to do well, some that uh, we didn't really necessarily expect that turned into huge hits. So we're just gonna jump right into it. To kick off, at my number 10, I had Now You See Me, Now You Don't. So this is the third film in the Now You See Me series, where we see Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Dave Franco, Isla Fisher also returns from the first film. For them, reprise their roles in this film as the main four horsemen, joined by some other new characters played by Justice Smith, Dominic Souza, Ariana Greenblatt. Um, so this was I love like the concept of like illusions, magic. It's one of my hobbies outside of like acting and stuff. So I do really enjoy these movies. A lot of the effects and like illusions they do in the movies. Um, a lot of it's very like complicated professional stuff, and like these actors aren't really like trained as illusionists, but they do such a great job with um, all the illusions and tricks in the movies. So it definitely adds a layer to the movies that I really enjoy. And for that, that's why this lands at number 10 for me. So jumping to number 9, I had Zootopia 2, where we see Jennifer Goodwin reprising her voice role as Judy Hopps, along with Jason Bateman as Nick Wilde. They're joined by Ke Kwan as Gary, the Viper Snake, and like I said in the episode where we did for specifically for Zootopia 2, um, Michael J. Fox does the voice. Michael J. the Fox, I think his name is in the film. Um, so that was pretty cool. So Zootopia 2, one of those rare sequels that may be better than the original. The original first Zootopia, amazing film. It did really good reception when it came out. Um, and it grew into a franchise very quickly with like a show on Disney Plus and like theme park attractions, stuff like that. The characters are well known now. We also have Flash, the Sloth, who is back in the second film. He's very popular. But the second film, it expands the world of Zootopia in a great way. The story, the visuals, the character development, all outstanding, and it just it enhances the story, moves it forward, moves the franchise forward in a very positive light. And in my opinion, it was actually one of the better films of the year, I think, overall. Very, very strong film. But it does that number 9 for me, just out of like personal opinion, personal how I viewed certain films. But it definitely was a great film. I think definitely probably the best animated film of the year. I think. Although there were a few really good animated films, but it definitely is, if not the best, very high up there. And just in general, I think it might have been one of the best films of the year, one of the strongest at least. So that's number nine. Number eight, I have Song Sung Blue. I'm a huge Neil Diamond fan. Specifically Sweet Caroline because I grew up in New England, like going to a lot of Red Sox games. It's a tradition they do play it there, so I know the song very well. Um, and because of that, I have looked into Neil Diamond other songs more when I was growing up because I had that kind of little exposure to him, I guess. Um, so I really enjoyed this film because of it. It is loosely based off of like a documentary, true story. It stars Hugh Jackman, Kate Hudson, um, and as like a Neil Diamond cover band. I enjoyed the movie. I love the music. I thought they did really good in a movie. Had a really good message in the movie. I know it was kind of like based off a true story, so like um, there was that, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done and well executed. And so for that, it is number eight. Number seven, I have Marty Supreme. So we see Timothy Chalamet in the starring role um, as a table tennis player, uh, Marty Reisman. It's loosely based off a true story, I think. It was great. Timothy Chalamet, a lot of critics and audiences are saying this is maybe his best performance to date. And I agree. Like it was very, very good. Um, he did excellent in the film. Overall, the film I thought was really, really good too. A strong film overall, and not just like performance in the film. Um, but it definitely was a great performance by Timothy Chalamet and leading the charge for this film. And definitely, I think he's definitely Oscar contender for this role, if not winning it maybe, but definitely contender for it. And overall, the film I think is definitely a big contender as well for a lot of awards. But it was a great overall film. A lot of fun to watch. Um, Sometimes these sports films, like certain sports films, especially for table tennis, it can kind of get boring. But like this film didn't, and like it had a lot of like emotion, heart to it, which was great. Which I think it helped make it even that much better. So number six, we have Fantastic Four: First Steps. So the Fantastic Four, this is the technically the third like released reboot of the this team of the series. Um, we did get that unreleased film back in the 90s that was fully made but was not released. Um, this film to date, they haven't had much luck on the big screen. The early films from like the 2000s are like with Chris Evans, um, Jessica Alba, and them. The first one did like it warranted a sequel, so like it did pretty good at least, especially for the time. And at that point, superhero movies weren't really a thing yet. I think they really started to become a thing like in 2008, where we had The Dark Knight and Iron Man that really kick-started superhero movies. Because like in the early 2000s, you had like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, the first couple X-Men, or maybe like the first three, like the first like original X-Men trilogy. Um, Superman Returns, but they didn't really like kind of like become a big staple in pop culture and in the industry until 2008. Um, So Fantastic Four First Steps definitely succeeded. I think where the other two attempts kind of failed, so to speak. And it wasn't necessarily because of the cast. I think the 2000s two films, they had good chemistry, I thought. Uh they played the roles well, I think. I didn't really have anything to complain about for those. The 2015 one, I know there was a lot behind the scenes that like changed the what we saw in the final cut of the film, at least theatrically. Um, but that film was kind of weird, I guess. At least what we saw, like it didn't really feel like the Fantastic Four that we really knew at that point, like from the comics and stuff. So yeah, it didn't really work, at least what we got. But this film, uh, they're set in like a 80s, 70s, something vibe, maybe earlier, I don't really know. But it definitely worked, and the formula they used to make the film I thought was really good, and we got to see Galactus in a way that we haven't seen him before in film. He was in the 2007, 6 or 7 Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. That film, it wasn't actually a character, it was just like a big giant mist thing in space that came to devour Earth at the end of the film. But this film, we actually got to see him. His design was pretty cool. He was very, like, when he was on screen, he was very intimidating. Like, his presence was known. Um, so they definitely did him justice, which was, for me, one of the good parts of the film because we got to see that. A lot of great messages in the film of like motherhood, stuff like that. How far you'll go to protect the ones you love, both on the good side and the bad side, and just overall a great film, and I think a well-made film that definitely finally did the Fantastic Four justice for being Marvel's first family and finally getting a film that for the most part like everyone enjoyed at least in some way, and uh, was a good film. Now, one of the problems that some people had with the film was that it didn't really have any really major connections or anything to the rest of the MCU, so we don't really have any questions answered, especially from like the post-credit scene and Thunderbolts, um, or how like they're going to end up with uh, the main MCU in Doomsday and Secret Wars. But besides that, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was great, and that's why it's number 6 on the list. Number 5, I had Thunderbolts. So Thunderbolts, before Thunderbolts, we had, with some minor exceptions, um, a run of not well received Marvel films in the MCU. Deadpool and Wolverine was an exception. No Way Home was an exception. Um, with some minor exceptions in between, but overall, and a lot of it had to do, I think, with nostalgia. Like Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, the Deadpool films are great in general, all three of them. But I think Deadpool and Wolverine, it definitely relied a lot on like nostalgia, especially once the Wolverine was introduced, when they were in uh, the Wasteland place. I forget what it's called, but and we saw some of those other old characters from like previous X-Men films. Um, but it was still a well-made film. A lot of that love we had from like the first two Deadpool typical films that were made with Fox. So jumping over to Disney, we didn't necessarily know what we were going to expect with that at the time. But to get back to Thunderbolts, well, and it worked, but to get back to Thunderbolts, it had the feel of like the older beginnings of the MCU, like with the original like Avengers movies, that like classic team up movies. They weren't trying to like do too much with it, and it worked very well. A lot of success. It didn't necessarily perform as well as some people may have wanted, but at box office, but it had that like original feel, which a lot of people talked about was a very positive aspect for it, which I definitely agree with. I thought that aspect of it made it better than it might have been if they approached it in a different way. So I thought it was well executed, and you could definitely like, even though like a ragtag group of misfits thrown together, who basically are all criminals, I guess. Um, but you could kind of like you could tell they had chemistry, even though they were just thrown together, which was great. So for those reasons, it is number 5. Number 4, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. So this is the culmination of all the Mission Impossible films, starting with the first film back from the 90s. We see Tom Cruise in his potentially final outing as Ethan Hunt. Overall, the film I thought was an improvement on Dead Reckoning from it was 2 years ago, and it still wasn't my favorite film in the franchise, but I thought it definitely was an improvement over Dead Reckoning, which a lot of people were kind of underwhelmed with when that came out a couple years ago. But this one, it was, you had a lot of the action, a lot of what you'd expect from Mission Impossible films. They were wrapping up one of the biggest franchises in film and pop culture, which isn't necessarily easy to do. But I thought that they did, there's a lot in the films, a lot that happens in all the films up till now. And I thought overall they did a pretty good job with wrapping it up, especially for how big it's been, especially in, the last like decade with like, starting with Ghost Protocol in 2011, I think, which kind of reinvigorated the series into like the critically acclaimed films that they have become since then. So it wasn't a perfect film. Was it the best ending they could have done? Maybe not. I know when it first came out, some people I talked to had kind of mixed reactions on it. Some people loved it. Some people were like, "Yeah, it could have been better. Like it was okay. It wrapped up the story enough." So I think I'm leaning more towards that side where it could have like, I don't know necessarily how like different they could have approached it, but it wasn't bad by any means, but it definitely wrapped up the story, but it could have been, it wasn't the best Mission Impossible film we've ever had, but it succeeded in what it was made to do, and got a lot of action, a lot of a great stunt from Tom Cruise, a few great stunts from him, a few great sequences. The submarine sequence where he was underwater for, it was a good sequence too. It wasn't short either. That was maybe one of the best sequences I think in the franchise. So it definitely had a lot of positives in the film, which is why it's higher on my list. And Yeah, it was definitely a good film. Definitely would rewatch it. Definitely succeed in what it was made to do. It just wasn't necessarily the best film in the franchise, but it was definitely it was still a strong film. So number three, I have Avatar: Fire and Ash. So Avatar: Fire and Ash, third film in the Avatar franchise. James Cameron returns to direct it. We see Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, uh, Stephen Lang, Sigourney Weaver, with a lot of other actors from like the second film and some from the first film, surprisingly roles, along with some new characters as well. Um, I love Avatar. It's one of my favorite franchises. It has become one of my favorite franchises, especially in the recent years. Um, Story wise, all three films I think are very similar. So very repetitive story wise. So nothing new there. But I thought just the reason it's higher than some of the other movies on my list is just, you know, expanding the world of Avatar, expanding the world of Pandora, seeing new areas, getting introduced to like new tribes, new conflicts, which maybe the conflicts are similar to like what we've seen in the past, but like just expanding the world, getting to see new things, advancements in like how they create these films, certain sequences. A lot of some of the new characters were really fun to watch. So for those reasons, I think it's definitely higher on my list than some other films that may have been if this wasn't. So that is number three. Number two, I have Sinners. So Sinners, I think it was kind of a surprise hit more than some other films for this year. It definitely had. I think before it came out, it definitely was gonna have like a big audience, but it was a lot bigger than I think uh, people thought it would be. Um, I remember when it came out, a lot of showings were selling out for weeks. So it definitely it was definitely like a bigger hit than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. Definitely became more popular. Um, it was a great story, great performances, a strong cast, strong story, um, a strong creative team behind the film. Very well made, and yeah, I don't really know. Well, I mean, I get why it was so popular because it was a well-made film, and very popular actors in the film maybe that applied to it too. Um, yeah, but it was just definitely a strong film overall, and Michael B. Jordan in like the dual roles, he did a really good job, I think. Some people when this film came out, like even like a little before it came out, were kind of questioning like his acting chops, I think, about whether he could handle like this dual role, because they're like kind of opposites in the film. And after seeing the film, I thought he did really well with the dual role. It definitely felt like two different characters, at least for most of the film. So that's why Sinners is at my number two spot. Before we hit number one, I have some honorable mentions. So, One Battle After Another. Um, this was one of the big films that I really, kind of had a hard time with. This was going to be in one of my top three, but like there were just, like I said before, so many films I could have chosen. It was a great film. Leonardo DiCaprio, especially, was great in the film. Uh, Overall, it was a very intense topic, intense story, very well made. Um, very well executed. The actors really knew what they were doing in the film, knew like what they were trying to tell, and I thought it was an excellent film, and definitely one of the best films of the year, I think. Um, but it is in the honorable mention list. It's not my number one film personally, but it definitely was a lot of great film to watch. Also, some other films, throughout the year, so many this year. Mickey 17 earlier in the year. We also had, the live action Lilo and Stitch, which, some people didn't necessarily enjoy as much. There were some complaints about it, and I didn't really have any problems with it. The one thing, like a lot of people were saying, is I can't think of his name now. The captain guy from the animated films, the whale or killer shark, whatever his name is. He wasn't in the film, and uh, I was talking with someone when it came out. Some part of the reason originally, I think they said it was supposed to be a Disney Plus release, but then and it had a smaller budget. Uh, but then it got a theatrical release, and I don't know if the budget was raised at all once the theatrical release was approved, but that was part of the reason why we didn't see that character. And they made I can't think of his name now. The guy who created Stitch, they made him like the villain of the film. Which some people didn't necessarily like because in the animated films, he joins the family up in the film, becomes part of the family, looks out for Stitch and the rest of the family. And in this film, in the live action film, he was made as the main antagonist in the film, which some people didn't really like that change. But overall, I thought it was a fun film. I enjoyed it. I thought that it had a good cast. The girl who played Lilo, I thought she did very well in the film. Especially acting with uh, you know, a character like Stitch, who is an actual character. She did a really good job with that because they had a lot of scenes together. So definitely a good film. We also had films like um, Wolfman earlier in the year, back in January, I think, which was a smaller like independent film, but it definitely I enjoyed it. It was it was a fun like monster movie that felt had like a nice like lower budget feel to it of like one of those original like monster movies from like years ago. So that was fun. Um, we had other films like Weapons, which was great. Dogman early in the year, which I didn't expect to really enjoy as much as I did, but I actually really enjoyed it. So that was a fun film. Recently, SpongeBob, Search for SquarePants. I've never been like a huge SpongeBob fan growing up, but it was a fun watch, and I enjoyed it. Um, So there were a lot of other films here that I enjoyed. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but there were a lot of great films that um, could have been on the list. A lot that some I had on the list that I took off the list. Also like How to Train Your Dragon, the live action one, which was a fun film. I enjoyed that. Also Karate Kid Legends, which I had that as my number two actually for most of the year. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a great film, and hopefully, it did well enough to warrant more films, and hopefully, they will continue to expand the franchise, whether it is like a another film or like even another series down the road. I don't know what their plans are necessarily with the Karate Kid franchise, at least right now, but I enjoyed the film. It did have a The first half I thought was amazing. It was really good. Very different feel from what we've seen in previous Karate Kid media, especially the films. The second half of the film kind of got back into that formula of like how the previous films are. But it kind of felt like two different films in a way, which was interesting because it wasn't that long. But it definitely like it kind of like the story kind of basically shifted, which was interesting. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it was interesting. The first half of the film, especially, was definitely a bit very strong, and I really enjoyed it. I watched it like 2 times on the plane recently when I was traveling, like in the past month or two. But yeah, definitely a good film. It was at my number 2 spot for most of the year. I really enjoyed it, and I think it was well made. So with that, my number 1 film for the year, Superman. So Superman, uh, very highly anticipated film for the year. Um, a lot of eyes on it. It's the first movie in the in James Gunn's DC universe. The first project in the universe was Creature Commandos season 1, which I haven't actually watched all of that, so I don't know if it ties in at all to Superman. But I know James Gunn was also talking about that. Like he wants each project, whether it's a movie or show, to kind of have some connections, but also if you just watch, if you jump in at a certain movie or show, you don't necessarily have to watch what's come before to understand what's going on, which isn't necessarily the case with the MCU. The Superman, uh, more lighthearted feel overall than like Man of Steel and Henry Cavill's Superman. At least there were a lot of dark moments in the film, a lot that he's going through in this film. But just overall, it's a lighter aspect, lighter feel than um, that universe, which I think is was worked better for this character. He's Superman. What he stands for, having a lighter version of the character as opposed to such like a dark tone that we previously saw. I thought was better received by a lot of people. Not everyone necessarily, but definitely a lot of people. But I thought it was a great film. David Cornswet did amazing. He really shifted his performance as Superman and as Clark Kent, so it felt like, in a way, two different characters, which, that's the point. But I thought he did really good with that. And just overall, what Superman stands for really showed that in the film, how he wants to save everyone, how he's that symbol of hope that people need. It really got that message across. And it started off the hopefully a long running franchise that we get with James Gunn's new DC universe, in a way where they introduced a decent amount of characters, heroes, and some villains alike that hopefully we'll see more of down the road, but also done in a way that didn't feel too overwhelming, like they were, starting a universe, which they were doing, but it didn't feel like they were just pushing it all on us. It was, I think, well made, and the way they went about it was well executed, and just a great overall movie that we ended up seeing. So that is number 1 on my list. Great film. Like I said, there have been a lot of films that were in the top few spots, but these were my top 10, and I thought 2025 definitely had a great year in film, a lot of great movies, and there was definitely a lot to talk about. So with that, we are going to wrap up today's episode and 2025 in film. So this was a look back at 2025. I went over my top 10 films. Um, Definitely had a lot of films in 2025. There were definitely some films that I, mentioned in my honorable mention, some that I didn't mention necessarily that um, I also wanted to mention that I forgot about maybe. But there were definitely some others that were great too that I had in my top tens earlier in the year that may have gotten pushed out that I didn't necessarily mention. Um, but yeah, there were a lot of great films this year. Some that we kind of expected to do well, some that we were kind of like a surprise hit to us, like Sinners, and some other films that ended up, I think, surprising us for doing so well. Um, but yeah, a lot of great films. There was a lot to talk about, a lot that I enjoyed watching, and I'm excited to um, you know, jump into 2026. We have a lot of big releases coming out then and a lot to look forward to. And I'm just excited to keep watching and seeing what comes out next. So I'd like to hear what your top 10 movies might be. If you want to drop your list in the comments on social media, let us know what movies you enjoyed the most this year. And again, this is my top 10 list of the movies that I enjoyed the most. There were some that weren't on the list that I really enjoyed, but just overall what I picked as, my favorite movies this year, which may be completely different from yours, may have some similarities, and that's, either way, it's fine. They're opinions. But I'd like to hear your opinions on it, what you liked, what movies, you didn't really live up to your standards this year, what you thought was the best film of the year, maybe, and all that. So if not already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media, and thank you for supporting us this year in 2025. And we look forward to a great 2026 in film and to start jumping in and talking about all those films that will be coming out this upcoming year and what we're looking forward to the most. And with that, we will see you all next time. Have a great day.